How important is love life for you? This is an interesting topic. How important is the love of your life for you? Would you do everything to win the love of your life? Marriage is not for everyone, but it is God's only way for you to have a lifelong partner exclusive to each other. Getting married or staying single are both good. They're optional. However, if you want to have a lifetime partner, you really have to be careful in the way you choose that one. It could make you or break you. So it is best to ask the Lord for help to get you a lifelong partner. Hello, life leaders. Today we will be talking about how Yaakov trusted the Lord to guide him find a suitable partner for him. We will study the 29th chapter of the book of Genesis. In this story, Yaakov wanted Rachel, but he got Leah instead. So it became a three-party affair. Now, it was permitted back then, but it is illegal to us to have two wives simultaneously nowadays in the Philippines. However, Yaakov originally intended to be monogamous. So we have to be fair to them as we learn more about their love story. I hope our young people will learn from this story, especially about waiting patiently for that dream partner. You say looks and personality are important. Sure, God gave us the freedom to choose whoever we like, whatever our categories be or qualifications we want from a person. But not every choice is good. Some choices are just bad. For single men looking for a lifelong partner, I hope you can learn from Yaakov on how he learned faith in God, sought to follow his path, and worked hard to earn his desired woman in life. The Lord guided him throughout this long process. For single ladies, you're looking for a man. Ideally, you would be waiting for the right man for your life. Though some women explore instead of just waiting to be befriended and courted. It's different nowadays. I hope that you would also learn to pray and be patient until the Lord gives you the man He wants you to have. I know His choice for you is the best. Now, this is my advice. Let God make you the right person to the right person He prefers to give you. As we learn from the story of Yaakov, it is better to look at the story of his twin brother. Well, the context is God has chosen the younger Yaakov over the older Esav. Esav made poor choices. Aside from selling his birthright to his younger twin Yaakov, he married women who were not following the Lord. It would be very difficult for Abraham and Yitzhak to have a big family through Esav because of his wives. Yaakov was still single at that time, so he still needed to find a wife at that time. And so his parents told him to find a wife back to where they came from in Haran. Genesis 26 verse 34. When Esav was 40 years old, he married Yehudith, daughter of Beeri the Hittite, and Basemath, daughter of Elon the Hittite. They were a source of grief to Yitzhak and Rebekah. The Hittites lived in what is now Turkey. Of all kinds of people, Esav married Hittite women. They did not fear God. Though Yitzhak loved Esav, how can Esav continue the mission of God to Abraham with those Hittite women that he had? Now in Genesis 27, Yitzhak turned over the blessing, the commission of God from his father Abraham, the leadership to Yaakov, who he thought was Esav. Later on in the same chapter we read, Genesis 27 verse 46, Then Rebekah said to Yitzhak, I'm disgusted with living because of these Hittite women. If Yaakov takes a wife from among the women of this land, from Hittite women like these, my life will not be worth living. She had enough of those ladies. So in other words, Rebekah was finding hope in bachelor Yaakov. However, it was too late for Esav to realize this, his big mistake in marrying Hittite women. Genesis 28 verse 8. Esav then realized how displeasing the Canaanite women were to his father Yitzhak. So he went to Ishmael and married Machalath, the sister of Nebaioth and daughter of Ishmael, son of Avram, in addition to the wives he already had. He was thinking that things would turn around for him. Maybe Esav thought that he can still make up to his father and grandfather by marrying his cousins. But no, it was too late for him. However, Yaakov was a deceiver. God needed to make bachelor Yaakov to become the right man for the right woman. He started by appearing to Yaakov in Bethel and promised to be with him to Haran, where he would need to get a wife and be back to Canaan. That's in Genesis 28 verses 13 to 15. If you want God to give you a good partner, be a good partner too. Be a good partner first. Before we proceed, I want us to understand this. Since we will find out that Yaakov would get married to two sisters, let us be fair to ancient people, to ancient cultures, to a very far land from where we are. This is not an endorsement of polygamy, which is not explicitly condemned in the scriptures, but is also not recommended. It wasn't God's intention for marriage. Again, Yaakov intended to be monogamous just like his parents and grandparents. Soon we will find out that God had a purpose for this. Yaakov would need many sons from 4 women, that is 2 wives with 2 concubines, in order to become a large clan, produce 12 tribes, and eventually a nation. I hope this is clear to us. Another important point. Nowadays, marriage is a matter of individual choices between 2 people who choose to love each other. Way back then, in fact, still in some other cultures nowadays, marriage is a matter of uniting families, strengthening those 2 families in order to strengthen their clans and tribes. That is why marriage were pre-arranged by their parents. Actually, that makes some sense too, though you may disagree with it because we live in the modern times. It worked for many of them, though not always. Let's get on with our study. I have 2 points to share. When you go with faith, you will find God's way. So faith will lead you to God's way. Faith in God is very important in traversing God's way. The Spirit guided Yaakov to the right place, to the right people, at the right time, and with the right words to say. Yaakov would become a stranger in Fadama, Aram, even though that was his parents' hometown. We need some context again from Genesis chapter 28 in order to understand chapter 29 correctly. Verse 1, So Yitzhak called for Yaakov and blessed him. Then he commanded him, Do not marry a Canaanite woman. Go at once to Fadana, Aram, to the house of your mother's father Bethuel. Take a wife for yourself there, from among the daughters of Laban, your mother's brother. In other words, Yitzhak wanted Yaakov not to be disqualified from inheriting the commission of God to Avram by becoming like his twin brother Esau, who married foreign women. This was also a message to future Israelites too. During the time of Moses onwards, they should not marry foreigners who will lead them away from the Yahweh. Verse 3, May God Almighty bless you and make you fruitful and increase your numbers until you become a community of peoples. May He give you and your descendants the blessings given to Abram, so that you may take possession of the land where you now reside as a foreigner. The land God gave to Abram. Yitzhak was encouraging Yaakov to learn to be faithful to God just as they have learned. So God could make him great too by having many children. Remember, Abraham had only 1 son with Sarah, who was really barren. Yitzhak had 2 sons from Rebekah, who was also barren, but they had a miraculous twin. Therefore, the couple wished that Yaakov would have so many sons. Soon we will learn that Yaakov's love, Rachel, was also barren. It would also be a fate story for Yaakov and Rachel, just like his parents and grandparents. Let's look at Yaakov's arrival. Genesis 29 verse 1. Then Yaakov continued on his journey and came to the land of the eastern peoples. Whoa, imagine how relieved Yaakov was arriving to his destination safe and sound after journeying from Beersheba in Canaan to Fadana, Aram for about 1,000 kilometers. That was no joke. We do not know if he was alone. Probably not. His parents may have sent servants to go with him there. Well, anyway, Yaakov, whether he liked it or not, had to take that long journey to Haran, be a stranger there, and have a family there and increase there before he could return to Canaan. This was prophetic of his children's journey to Egypt and back to Canaan. It was in Egypt that they increased. Yaakov knew that God's blessing would be there in Fadana Aram, and so he took that faith journey. You should take the faith journey too. You may not like where you are right now, but in a strange land, you will grow in faith, experience God's miraculous work, and receive God's great blessings. See how the Lord guided Yaakov. Verse 2, There he saw a well in the open country, with 3 flocks of sheep lying near it. Beside the flocks were watered from that well. The stone over the mouth of the well was large. Then all the flocks were gathered there. The shepherds would roll the stone away from the well's mouth and water the sheep. Then they would return the stone to its place over the mouth of the well. Yaakov asked the shepherds, "My brothers, where are you from?" "We're from Haran," they replied. Scholars say that Abram was an Amorite, and so Yaakov must have spoken the same language with the people of Haran, though he may have needed to adjust to their culture, climate, and environment. Since he was practically a stranger there, he wisely asked simple shepherds instead of going to the leaders of the tribe, bragging about himself as the successor of the enterprise of Avram and Yitzhak, and asking them to lead him to his grandpa's family. Instead, he connected with shepherds. Verse 5, he said to them, "Do you know Laban, Nachor's grandson?" "Yes, we know him," they answered. Then Yaakov asked them, "Is he well?" "Yes, he is," they said. "And here comes his daughter, Rachel with the sheep." Have you been lost in a strange place? Did you ever wonder if you could go to your destiny, or at least come back to where you came from? Did you try to look for help, but no one was there? Good thing we have Google Maps nowadays, but sometimes we still need the locals to guide us to where we are going. See what happened there in verse 6. How convenient that was. Yaakov quickly found his future wife, though he had yet to know his other choices. You know the saying among guys, collect and select. Collect female friends and then select which ones to court. Now that's actually good, I think. Know your friends first. Then you can take it to the next step once you have chosen the best from among the choices. But back to the story, you can say, there's nothing special with that. Yaakov was just lucky to find men who knew Laban. However, that was a big deal for Yaakov. Do you believe in love at first sight? We are not certain if Yaakov and Rachel felt that way. I think Jacob did, as we will see in verse 7. Rachel was indeed beautiful according to verse 17. You see, guys tend to consider the looks of a woman first. True? Before they consider personality. Well, that's man's nature. Maybe for Rachel, it wasn't love at first sight. But later on, she will be impressed with Yaakov and may have liked him for that. I can imagine whenever Yaakov and Rachel would tell their love story, they would recall and retell how they met each other for the first time there at the well. And they could not believe that they ended up getting married soon. Lovely. Look at Yaakov's knowledge. Verse 7. Look, he said, the sun is still high. It is not time for the flocks to be gathered. Water the sheep and take them back to the pasture. We can't, they replied, until all the flocks are gathered and the stone have been rolled away for the mouth of the well. Then we will water the sheep. Even though the shepherds directed Yaakov already to Rachel, he took time to help the shepherds instead of immediately going to Rachel. Why? Maybe he was trying to make an impression to the shepherds, including Rachel, who was still on her way there to the well. He used his knowledge about shepherding. In fact, he would soon perform well in shepherding himself in chapter 30, verses 29 and 30. Now you may think, how did Yaakov know this? Doesn't Genesis 29 verse 27 say that he just stayed at home? Oh yes, it does say that, but it does not mean that he literally never went out of the tents. What it probably means that he did not go out into the wild, unlike his twin brother Esau. His family was into farming and domesticating animals like sheep. Esau went to the wild. He didn't care about those things. He was always far and away in danger. Therefore, Yaakov may have learned shepherding techniques from his father's business. It was important for Yaakov to think quickly. He needed to get the attention of Rachel and impress the shepherd with a very kind act. Verse 9, while he was still talking with them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she was a shepherd. When Yaakov saw Rachel, daughter of his uncle Laban, and Laban's sheep, he went over and rolled the stone away from the mouth of the well and watered his uncle's sheep. As Rachel approached the well, Yaakov was just about to open the heavy stone cover of the well. The lady would have wondered, who is this guy? Where did he come from? Wow, look how strong he is. He was able to remove the heavy cover of the well. But he is a stranger. Why would he do that? Yaakov did not care if Rachel was doing a man's job, shepherding. The important thing for him is he needed to be accepted by the people, so he made a heroic move there. Remember the story of his parents. When Abram sent his servant to Haran to find a wife for his son Yitzhak, Rebekah did the extraordinary thing. Genesis chapter 24 verse 20. She gave water to the servant and to his camels. The camels need so much water to be filled. That was much hard work and kindness from a lady. Now in the case of Yaakov, it was the opposite. Yaakov did the extraordinary kindness. He had to make a good impression to win Rachel. He was strong enough to roll over the cover of the well. He watered Laban's sheep, though not as thirsty as the camels were, but of course, there were more sheep than camels. So Yaakov made a bold move. Verse 11. Then Yaakov kissed Rachel and began to weep aloud. He had told Rachel that he was a relative of his father and a son of Rebekah. So he ran and told her father. After seeing what Yaakov did, Rachel may have smiled wide to her ears and have admired the stranger. Then to her surprise, he revealed to her his true identity. He kissed her. Now, I don't think he did it with malice. He was simply overjoyed to see a relative. A man kissing a woman was not normally done in public, much less when they have just met. But indeed, that was a bold move. Well, perhaps Jacob just could not contain himself with joy. So it may not be that inappropriate as we might think of it. They were cousins anyway, so to say the least. Well, Raquel did not freak out. Did she slap him and complain against him? No. In fact, she was also happy to tell her father about meeting him. That was why Laban was also glad to welcome him. Verse 13. As soon as Laban heard the news about Yaakov, his sister's son, he hurried to meet him. He embraced him and kissed him and brought him to his home. And there Yaakov told him all these things. Then Laban said to him, "You are my own flesh and blood." A man kissing another man is the normal way of greeting and acceptance in ancient Near East, as well in modern Eastern Europe and in the Middle East. That looks weird to Westerners, including us Filipinos. This was unexpected for Laban and for his family. This was heartwarming for Yaakov. Being accepted was no less than what he could hope for. He was considered family, not a stranger. You are my flesh and blood. He was no stranger anymore. So that was letter A. When you go with faith, you find God's way. Yaakov took that faith journey in the way of the Lord. He was guided. He made a good impression. He was accepted. The love story of Yaakov and Rachel began with the man knowing his mission to find a future wife with the blessing of his parents and with the guidance of the Lord. Trusting in God's guidance, Yaakov found himself in a good position to continue in the way of God. God was changing Yaakov here. The man did things he never did before. He was honest. He walked by faith as he never tried before. He went God's way as an eligible bachelor, ready to seek and find God's prepared lifelong partner for him. Letter B. When you go God's way, you will get your blessing. The blessing is in the way of God, not somewhere else. The Lord granted Yaakov the right person to marry, the patience with Laban, the strength to accomplish his obligations, and the blessings for working hard. Now in this section, the Lord began giving Yaakov the opportunity to work for a woman that he wanted to marry. Verse 14, after Yaakov had stayed with him for a whole month, Laban said to him, "Just because you are a relative of mine, should you work for me for nothing? Tell me what your wages should be." Yaakov did not immediately tell Laban his purpose there. He waited patiently for the opportunity to come to him. Well, perhaps Laban already sensed that, and Yaakov was already showing it to him indirectly. Well, Yaakov could not blow this chance. He could fail like his brother did, and he could not afford that. The first month was very critical for him. Yaakov did not know how long it would take him to gain the trust of Laban, but he was consistent in winning their trust. Those are the signs of maturity, patience, winning people's trust, waiting for the higher people to offer them the greater opportunity. Remember, bosses would love to promote very responsible people, but they are disgusted at employees who think they deserve to be rewarded with promotion. Why? Because superiors see things differently. They see things from above, while subordinates see things from below. Laban let Yaakov to stay for a month. Well, that was grace. But probably Yaakov served and helped out in the family business within that span of time. He continued to be the hero Raquel saw in him in the first time that they met at the well. Now, after a month, he deserved to receive wages for the work he was doing there. He has proven to them that he was a faithful and trusted man. When God opens opportunities for the faithful, they will be surprised at what God has in store for them. Look at the words of Laban. "Tell me what your wages should be." Oh man, usually bosses make offers on what they can only give, but owners, not bosses, usually can tell the one being promoted, "Name your price." So at this time, Yaakov cannot afford to be scared. He had to tell Laban that he came there to find a wife for himself. Now perhaps, again, Laban already sensed that. And he would be proud to have Yaakov, a very hardworking person and honest, to be his son-in-law. I also wanted us to imagine this situation from the perspective of the sisters. Well, of course, it was improper for women to flirt with men, though that happens all the time, even in cultures where that is considered inappropriate. Perhaps both sisters were wishing they could have Yaakov as their future husband. They could only hope for that, but they could not offer themselves to Yaakov. They would look cheap. So what else could have he done in order to win their trust? So maybe he would be telling stories of his life way back there in Beersheba. Perhaps he told about his grandpa, his father, and his brother Esab, maybe in the sanitized way, but we're not sure. Verse 16, now Laban had two daughters. The name of the older was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Leah had weak eyes, but Rachel had a lovely figure and was beautiful. No scholar or Bible translator is certain what Leah had weak eyes really mean. You cannot get a consensus from among them about the description of Leah. Well, my theory is that Leah was not as beautiful as her younger sister was. Now, I cannot say that she's ugly, or maybe she really was, but that was just a euphemism for that. I doubt it means she had weak vision, but of course that is still possible. But maybe her eyes literally made her look different, less pleasing than her sister. Well, nobody can be sure. Again, guys tend to look at the appearance first, but that's not necessarily wrong. But sometimes a person's eyes impact the overall look of a person, positively or negatively. While the author intentionally tells us Rachel's advantages over her sister, he did not disregard Leah's privilege as the older sister. Remember, Esab was also older than Yaakov. He was the younger of the twin. So maybe he understood how Rachel felt about the situation. She was at a disadvantaged position, while Leah, being the older, had the advantage. Now, when Laban asked Yaakov what wages he wanted to receive, I wonder if Yaakov quickly gave an answer to him. I'm sure he has thought of that long before Laban made that offer to him. Since Rachel was the more beautiful of the two sisters, she was obviously Yaakov's choice. Verse 18. Yaakov was in love with Rachel and said, I'll work for you 7 years in return for your younger daughter, Rachel. Now, why 7 years? You know that 7 is the biblical number for completion. Yaakov expressed his intention to complete the process of earning Rachel with honest hard work, unlike how he undercut his brother Esab and deceived his father Yitzhak. Here's an advice. Young people, do not hurry love. Just like Yaakov, he proved his love for Rachel to Laban. Also try to prove your worth to the one you wanted to marry. Remember, the father gets the approval, so he had to really win the approval of Laban. I know that is also the technique of some of you guys. You try to win the parents first so you can get the daughter's approval as well. How did Leah feel that her sister was chosen over her when she knew she had the privilege of getting married first? Perhaps she was hurt, just like how Esab was hurt and become furious when Yaakov pretended to be him and received the blessing of their father Yitzhak. Verse 19, Laban said, it's better that I give her to you than to some other man. Stay here with me. So Laban agreed to give the younger daughter instead of the older daughter. Or did he? Since it was good for Laban, Yaakov thought everything was fine. Everything was okay. He was probably elated that Laban approved his proposal. Laban deceptively did not counter-offer Yaakov, which is giving Leah first. Yaakov did not realize that he met his match in his future father-in-law, Laban. What about the reaction of the two sisters? Well, we don't know. Maybe there was a tension between the two, just like Esab and Yaakov had their own tension. Since he was yet to earn Rachel, Yaakov had to do more hard work than ever before. Verse 20. So Yaakov served 7 years to get Rachel, but they seemed like only a few days to him because of his love for her. That's what love can do. No work is hard enough if the price is more precious than gold. Look at this. Yaakov probably did not bring much with him when he left Beersheba. He had no dowry to pay Laban. Service would be his dowry. Now, the present culture does not like hard work. People have become cheap, free as hookup. You know what hookup culture is? Just like in the West, doing the deed is free as long as it is consensual. People have made it so easy to have it without commitment. They have corrupted the holiness of sexual activity. While our generation is used to instant access and acquisition with a mindset of entitlement, Yaakov learned to work hard because he was following God's way. Young people, please follow God's way. Don't hurry up things. You will not regret it. Men, treasure what you have worked hard for. Women, please be sure that they will work hard for you. Verse 21, Then Yaakov said to Laban, Give me my wife. My time is completed and I want to make love to her. Yaakov was so excited that he wanted to lay with Raquel immediately, even though the wedding feast, which lasts for a week, wasn't completed yet. He waited so long for that moment that he just wanted to have her at that time. Imagine this. He was able to wait for 7 years, but he could not wait for 1 week to finish that festivity. Soon he would be paying for this. Verse 22. So Laban brought together all the people of the place and gave a feast. The celebration lasted for a week with much eating and drinking. Everything looked fine, right? Yaakov was so happy. While many people are extremely happy for receiving things they did not work for, Yaakov felt fulfilled for being celebrated for what he worked hard. There is no shame or embarrassment in this. It was his due. Now, we come to the disappointing part of the story. Yaakov got deceived by Laban. Verse 23. But when evening came, he took his daughter Leah and brought her to Yaakov, and Yaakov made love to her. And Laban gave his servant Zilpah to his daughter as her attendant. Was his excitement for Raquel got the best out of him by laying with Leah immediately? Well, of course, he didn't realize it was Leah. He thought it was Raquel. Before he completed the week-long wedding festivity? I think so. He should have waited for that week-long festivity to be completed. How come he did not recognize the woman he slept with to be Leah? Well, it's a wonder, right? I think the answer is intoxication. Intoxication may have made his eyes worse than his father, Yitzhak. Remember, he took advantage of his father's poor eyesight, but at least he recognized Yaakov's voice. Leah probably did not have to pretend that much. All she had to do was stay silent and let the man do it to her and make him so carried away with the activity that he would not care who she really was. When did Yaakov realize he was deceived? In the morning. When morning came, there was Leah. So Yaakov said to Laban, What is this that you have done to me? I served you for Rachel, didn't I? Why have you deceived me? Didn't Laban's deception remind Yaakov of his own deceit? Probably. Did he blame himself for what had happened to him? We're not sure, but maybe. Yaakov got a taste of his own medicine and he didn't expect it to happen to him there and for his future father-in-law to do it to him. You see, he connived with his mother Rebecca to deceive Yitzhak. Laban and Leah connived together to deceive Yaakov. So he probably did not expect to be deceived at a younger age than what his father's age was when he deceived him. Well, tradition says Yaakov was about 70 when he was deceived by Laban, while Yitzhak was about 130 years old when he deceived his father. I personally think these ages were exaggerated, but my point remains the same. Verse 27, Finish this daughter's bridal week, then we will give you the younger one as well, in return for another 7 years of work. So now, he will have to work for Raquel, but in debt. Yaakov could not change his situation anymore. Leah has become his wife technically when he slept with her. He cannot give Leah back to Laban and get Raquel instead. How difficult was it for Yaakov to realize that Laban was a deceiver like him? How difficult was it for Yaakov to realize who Laban really was, a deceiver as well? Maybe it was so hard. How difficult was it for Yaakov to accept Leah as his new wife? Imagine how their relationship went when he had two wives, one he doesn't really love and the one he truly loves. What option did Yaakov had? He had to be patient again. He had to work for 7 years to pay his father-in-law for Raquel that he already had at that time. You know the saying, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Verse 29, Laban gave his servant Bilhah to his daughter Rachel as her attendant. Yaakov made love to Rachel also, and his love for Rachel was greater than his love for Leah. And he worked for Laban another 7 years. Obviously, this is a long story cut short. The author got to the bottom line here. He finally got Rachel as his wife. So it is so hard to blame Yaakov for not giving equal love for his two wives because he really wanted to become monogamous, but instead he got two of them. Still, he worked hard for Rachel for the sake of love and of the future. Well, how important was that? Well, he didn't know this at that time, but eventually we will find out that he would have Joseph and Benjamin from her. And you know Joseph would be saving them by becoming the vizier of Egypt. And Benjamin, his tribe, would become one of the strongest of the tribes of Israel. Did Yaakov think of getting back to Laban? Well, the idea may have come into his mind, but he did not. He simply made sure that he would get Rachel for his second 7 years of service. Well, he did sort of got back at Laban in Genesis chapter 13, but he didn't deceive him. He just kept a secret that God told him a strategy to get back at Laban. So let it be, when you go God's way, you will get your blessing. While Yaakov experienced deception from Laban, he did not give up on earning Rachel, his true love. Though nowadays men cannot get married to two women legally at the same time, they need to go God's way to get God's blessings. Finding love with God's guidance. Young people, please choose God's way by going in faith that He will give you the right person for you. But He will have to make you the right person first before you will have your Raquel. So learn to work hard and stop your deceitful ways. Don't shortcut things. Work hard, be patient, avoid Esav's mistake, who married women that caused pain to Yitzhak and Rebekah. Let God guide you and reward you with the best person for you. When you go with faith, you will find God's way. And when you find God's way, you will get your blessing.